Welcome, gentlemen. Have you always wanted Creed's Aventus but aren't willing to spend a $300 to $500 price tag? If that sounds like you, I got you. This video is for you. We're going to go over 5 clones and compare them to their original to see if they're as good, if not better performers. Now, clones have become wildly popular because the price tag of these niche and designer colognes are skyrocketing. I appreciate the artisanship and the creativity it takes to develop these fragrances, but charging $300 to $500 seems obscene. There's so much more I can do with that money. I'd rather spend $50 on a clone that is as good, if not better many times, than its original. Now, before I decide whether I'm purchasing a clone, I have 3 criteria. 1, the similarity in scent needs to be between 85 and 95% accurate. It's really difficult to find a one-to-one, so 85 to 95% accuracy is good for me. Secondly, the performance of that cologne needs to be as good, if not better than its original. Because if I'm spending $20 to $40 on a cologne that only lasts me 2 to 3 hours, then I've still thrown away that money. And lastly, on price, it has to be at least 50 to 75% cheaper than its original. If it's any different than that, then I'll just go with the original. Now, all the clones that I'm about to go over meet that criteria, and I'm not going to put them in any particular order, but I am going to leave the most controversial one for last. Now let's jump right into the first one, and it's Creed's Aventus. The clone that I'm going to suggest to you is from Armaf, and it's Club de Nuit Intense Man. Now this one opens up with the same amount of pineapple that you get in Creed's Aventus. The difference with this is you're gonna get a little bit more of a blast of lemon. The mid and the dry down is very similar to Creed's Aventus. In fact, in air, it's really difficult to tell the difference with this. This is a great 3-season fragrance. And I will tell you the performance on this one is great. I get 8 to 10 hours out of this cologne. In air, it's very difficult to tell the difference. But the difference for me is one's gonna cost me $300 to $400, the other one's gonna cost me $30 to $40. Now the second one is a clone of Jean Paul Gaultier's Le Male Elixir, and it's also by Armaf, and it's Armaf Lionheart. Now this one opens up with the same amount of lavender and mint, and you're gonna get the vanilla and the benzoin in the mid, and in the base, you're gonna get that honey, the tonka bean, and the tobacco. The difference with this one that I found is that this one adds a little bit of a freshness to it that I don't get from the Le Male Elixir. For me, I'm looking for versatility. This one, I can get a 3-season fragrance out of this one. They're both very seductive, sweet scents. However, this one, again, with that freshness, it adds a little bit more versatility that can pull this off in the day. This one, I tend to wear this one a little bit more at night. But this one's gonna run you about $150, and this one's gonna run you $40. All right, guys, the third one is a clone of my favorite fragrance of all time, and it's Bvlgari Tygar. The clone that I'm going to recommend to you is from Maison Alhambra, Bronzite. Now this one opens up with the same amount of grapefruit, and then that ginger, and then ambroxan pushes through. It's a very versatile fragrance, beautiful, beautiful scent. It is quite difficult to tell the difference in air with this one. In fact, let me tell you a story to that. I sprayed Bronzite on my left hand. My wife and I went to our local department store. I had the rep spray Tygar on my right hand. I told her I wanted to walk around with it to see how it settled before I spent that $400 price tag. When I went back, I had the rep smell the hand that I sprayed Bronzite, and she could not tell the difference. In addition to that, by the time I got home, the Tygar had become a skin scent, whereas Bronzite was still pushing through. Bronzite's gonna run you about $30, whereas Tygar is gonna run you $300 to $400. The fourth one I want to go over with you is a clone of Maison Margiela's by the Fireplace from the replica line. Now this is a great, seductive, smoky fragrance. It's exactly the way it sounds, by the Fireplace. The clone that I found is from the House of Latafa, Amir Al Oud Intense Oud. Now this one opens up with the same amount of smokiness that you get by the Fireplace. The difference is that this one dries down with a little bit more of a sweetness. Now I will say, as far as comparison of all the ones that I've shown you so far, these are the 2 that have the most differences. Now as the dry down comes through, you can absolutely tell what they were going for with this one. But like I said, a little bit more sweetness, a little bit more versatility with this. You're gonna get the woodiness and the incense from both of them, but this one, that vanilla really pushes through just a tad more. This one is an EDT concentration. It's not a great performer. This one is an EDP concentration, and although synthetic, a much better performer, I get 10 to 12 hours out of this one. This one's gonna cost you $160. This one's gonna cost you about $30. All right, guys, we've reached the last one. Now hear me out. I agree with a lot of you. It is a very saturated fragrance on the market. It is a top seller year after year. Everybody owns it, but there's a reason. Because it smells really good, and it is a great compliment getter. And if you haven't guessed it already, Dior Sauvage. But again, hear me out. Hear me out. I'm going to show you 3 clones that are going to save you some money and create a little bit of variety for you. Now the clones that I'm going to show you are all from Maison Alhambra, and it's from the Salvo line. Now this first one is called Salvo Eau de Parfum, which is a clone of Sauvage's EDT. Very similar with that bergamot and the pepper, along with that lavender and that ambroxan pushing through at the end, which is the main DNA of Sauvage. But if you want an even better performer, then I would suggest Salvo Intense, which is a clone of Sauvage EDP. This one is a much better performer, and in fact, this one's a lot closer in similarity to the EDP of Sauvage. Now I have one more cologne suggestion for you. If you want to stay within the Sauvage family, but you want to deviate a little bit and not be part of the masses, then what I would suggest to you is Salvo Elixir, which is a clone of Sauvage Elixir. And in my opinion, of all the Sauvages, Elixir is the best one and the least mainstream. Probably because of the $240 price tag, but it is a great smelling cologne. Now take a look at the notes. Side by side, there's not a ton of similarities, but somehow the way they formulated Salvo Elixir, the end result is that you could not tell the difference between Sauvage Elixir and Salvo Elixir. I will say that Sauvage Elixir opens up a little bit more bright, whereas this one pushes through. And even though there's no licorice in the notes, you smell the licorice as though you do with the Sauvage Elixir. Great performer. Obviously not the beast mode the Sauvage Elixir is, but there's not many fragrances out there that are as strong as Sauvage Elixir. But for 21 bucks, I get 8 hours out of this thing. I can just respray. There you go, guys. Some cologne options are going to help you smell great on a budget. I'll list all these fragrances in the show notes below. I'm also going to list you the Facebook page where I get all my fragrances, and that's from Cleopatra Perfumes in El Paso, Texas. Now, their website is under construction, but they do have 5 locations, so if you're ever in the area, please stop by. They have the biggest selection that I have found at the best prices. They are absolutely my go-to when I'm hunting for fragrances, whether I'm looking for clones or originals. Guys, the weather's starting to warm up and spring is right around the corner. So in the next video, we're gonna go over 10 spring essentials that every man should own. Thanks again, guys, and see you in the next one.